Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at another DMU train pack, but this time hopefully a slightly better one by Bachmann. The last DMU I looked at was made by Hornby and it was their Class 110, and this was an extremely affordable DMU. Even at its full price without any discounting, this cost £179.99, and for a 3-car set that makes it one of the most affordable DMUs you can buy. However, the catch was it didn't work properly and it wasn't very good. I wasn't able to recommend it, and if you want to know why that was, you can check out the review there. Today then I've decided we're going to look at what is hopefully going to be a better DMU. It's one by Bachmann, and it is this. It is Bachmann's Class 150/1 DMU. And whether it's better or not, I don't know, but I can say it's an awful lot more expensive. So according to some of the retailers, the DMU matching this product number now costs £309.95. And even though this is just a 2-car set and not a 3-car set, that is still £130 more expensive than Hornby's 110 on RRP, so massively more expensive. But most retailers do have this significantly discounted now. Most of them are selling this for just a hair over £200 actual price. Kerno, for example, have this for £209.99. I bought this one though in a sale from the Model Centre at £129.15, which is obviously so much more affordable. At that price I decided, do you know what, we're going to give this a try. Now I'm thinking this is a more modern and more detailed DMU with more features. In fact, you can buy different versions of this which have even more features. There's a passenger fitted version of this now, which is interesting, more expensive of course, and you can also get a sound fitted version of the Class 150, which of course is even more money. So I'm very curious to see what this is like. Obviously far more expensive than the Hornby Class 110, even at the discounted price I paid, actually for me. Yeah, it's still a lot more than that, even though that was a 3-car set. So yeah, what's this going to be like? Is it going to be worth what I paid? Is it going to be worth the higher prices, over £300? Yikes, that's kind of a lot, isn't it? But we shall see. And if you'd like to try one of these two, or perhaps browse the range, see what other liveries are available, I'll pop an affiliate link down in the description. For now though, the Bachmann Class 150, let's see what this is like. And I did actually ride a Class 150 recently, not one looking quite like this. The one I rode was in a Great Western livery, but I will be interested to see this, to see if it sort of matches what I remember of it. Anyway, in terms of the age of this model, it's a little bit difficult to say how old the tooling for this is. Bachmann's first Class 150 was released in about 2008, but it looks as though this particular variation of the tooling was released in about 2014. So the tooling seems to be at least 10 to 11 years old, and maybe if parts of this date back to the 2008 release, then yeah, elements of the model might be even older than that. But it wasn't designed in the 1980s like the Hornby Railroad DMU was, so I can expect this, I think, to be more modern and up to date than that was. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So the version I've got here, and there are others to choose from, is 32-930. It's the Class 150/1 2-car DMU, that's the number 150133, and basically it's in a regional railways livery, so the Greater Manchester PTE, and it is DCC ready with a 21-pin socket. It's not entirely clear whether there are two 21-pin sockets, one for each vehicle, or whether they're coupled together electrically in some way. I suspect the latter. I've seen Bachmann do that before, and if so, that will mean that only one decoder is required, but yeah, we'll see. Right, if I flip this box over, you can see here we've got a brief bit of history on the Class 150, so if you want to pause and read that, feel free to, although I will give you a bit of info on the Class 150 in just a second. Right, opening, let's see what this thing is like. 2-car set, reasonably large looking DMU this, and they are packaged individually. Let's pull that out. All right, so it looks as though you can't see this, but I'm looking down the end of the box and the code for this is 210119. So I would guess this is either made in 2021 or 2019, probably 21. So yeah, a few years old now, but hopefully reasonably up to date. That's not that long ago, whichever it is. Right, so I can see we've got instructions in this box, so I guess we'll start with this one. Let's pop this out and take a look at them, and wow. Yeah, for presumably the driving car of a 2-car set, and only a 2-car set, this seems remarkably weighty, very, very weighty. In fact, I could see that hauling massively long trains actually, but of course it doesn't really need to. Right, let's have a look at this then. So here we've got what looks like an exploded diagram. So we'll start with this, replacement parts, bit of a parts list here. You can see how this unit goes together. So we've got the body, and there's the motor unit at the back, which is a very big chunky thing. That is going to be visible through those windows, isn't it? But yeah, we've got a decent sized motor with a flywheel, and it appears to drive just one bogie. But again, it's a 2-car set. It doesn't need to be all-wheel drive, I don't think. You can see we've got a snowplow, which we can fit optionally by the looks of it, provided, of course, you're not using the NEM tension lock couplings. So that's a nice option. And then on the back, should have looked at this first, really. So general information, how to remove the body. So it looks like 1 screw at one end, 2 screws at the other end. You can unclip the body. I'll do that later on. How to fit a DCC decoder, controlling lights. Yeah, obviously I was expecting to see lights here, and it seems as though we have got at least headlights, tail lights, and internal lights. That's really good to see for the money. In terms of sound, there is a speaker shown on the diagram there, but it only mentions PCB connections for the speaker, so I don't think a pre-fitted speaker is here either then. Which is a great shame for the money, but we'll see, maybe there is one. And hints for best running on DCC, okay. And then I think the other sheet is just generic information. Yeah, no more diagrams or specific info on there, right. So yeah, like I say, I think this has got to be the driving car. If this is the non-driven car, then this is insanely heavy, and I doubt I'll be able to lift the other one. But yeah, I think this is probably it. Let's see. Right, first look at the finish. It's probably not going to be a massive shock, although actually that is a really lovely finish. Yeah, it's very, very clean looking for one of these. I don't imagine they stayed as pristine as that for very long in service, but yeah, as a brand new model, that's what you'd expect, and it looks pretty good. Right, lifting up. Good Lord, why is it so heavy? Goodness me, it weighs a ton. I'm sure I have some serious diesel models that are lighter than this in weight. And yeah, it looks pretty good, although there is one glaring issue with it. Yeah, look at that. We've got just a big, massive metal block behind the 2 rear windows there. Goodness me, Bachmann, what? We're going to charge over £300 full price for something that looks like that? And I guess I can kind of understand that, you know, if this was designed in 2008, 2014, the size of mechanisms back then probably meant that this was necessary. But, you know, I bought this recently, and this is still available in 2025 in the age of the coreless motor and super low relief mechanisms. This isn't necessary anymore. I think Bachmann could have done more to make it clear how seriously compromised this model is. So yeah, the rest of the detail looks fantastic, which kind of seems a little bit pointless when there's something so distracting there at the back. But yeah, the rest of the model does look very, very good, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a second. Let's see what the other vehicle's like then. So this one I don't think should be driven, but I'll be interested to see whether it's got a connector on it so that it can connect to the driving trailer electrically. So, didn't get any accessories with the first lot. Yes, and here there are accessories. So let's pop these out and we'll have a look at those to start with. Here we go. Oh, they're taped down, okay. So it's a hefty accessories bag actually. So we have got a coupling here. There we go, that's answered my question. So we've got a sort of NEM pocket bar coupler there, which does have 2 prongs on it in order to connect the 2 electrically. So that's pretty cool. Then we've got what looks like a BSI coupling possibly mounted onto a NEM. So that's a cool way that you can fit that. And we've got the snowplow, a few other bits and bobs, some screws, the speaker enclosure if you wanted to fit one of these with sound. So yeah, we've got some options there. let's have a look at the trailer itself then. And yes, it does feel much, much, much lighter, as you'd fully expect. Same decent finish though. Yeah, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? And lifting up. Yeah, much lighter. This feels like a standard coach, I would say. And yeah, the interior is not compromised by a hideously large motor bogie, which is good. Although I can see that this does have traditional wiper pickups and not the axle-based pickups that I've seen Bachmann use before. So yeah, that's going to be adding a bit to the drag, but it's not going to matter because of the weight of the driver. So let me hold these two together. There we go. It's a very, very weighty set, including that driver. And the decoration's gorgeous. Yeah, it really does look nicely painted. So, a close look at these in just a second, but first let's have some background on this class in real life. The British Rail Class 150, or Sprinter, that was their nickname, was introduced in 1984 as a fleet of 137 DMUs to be used on light regional services across Britain. The Sprinters were developed alongside the similar but smaller Pacer DMUs as a cheaper alternative to maintaining the ageing first generation of DMUs, making the Sprinters part of the second generation. Because they were built to be affordable, they were quite simple in design, and they featured just a single engine per car as opposed to 2 engines per car as seen on the first generation DMUs, or many of them. As much as this sounds like putting all of the eggs into one basket, it was established that even if one of the engines was to fail, there would be enough power in the other car, or cars if it was a 3-car set, to keep the train working. The Class 150s were made up of either 2 or 3-car sets, and they used the same body shell as the Class 455 EMU, which also reduced development costs. The Class 150 is an extremely long-standing class with many units still in operation today under the Great Western, under Northern Trains, Transport for Wales Rail, London North Western Railway and more. In fact, only about 6 units have been scrapped, meaning that the vast majority still exists either in use or in storage. So here they are up close and personal for you, the 2 cars of Bachmann's Class 150 DMU. And I've had a chance to take a close look at this now, and I think what I'll say is this. Outwardly, this is a fantastic model, it's very premium. The interior is a shambles though, and we'll talk more about why that is later on. On the whole though, I would say given how much this cost at its full price, I would say once again Bachmann have failed to deliver what is expected of them here. At that price, I'd want a model that is truly refined, both outside externally and internally as well. And we will talk about the problems with the interior in just a second. And in some ways this isn't a massive problem. You might say not every model needs to be a brand new Acura scale masterpiece, and that's absolutely true. Yes, I agree with that. But if a model is not an Acura scale masterpiece, it should be priced accordingly. And with a full price of over £300 for this 2-car set, I don't think that is the case. Now, having said that, I paid just £129.15 for this, which works out at about £65 per vehicle. That is a good price. I am not going to complain at that. At that price, I'm perfectly happy. However, it's quite unusual to be able to buy these at such a good price. Most of the time, these are still over £200 at the retailers, and I would say that is pushing it a bit for a model that is so bad internally. So do be aware of what you're getting into before you drop £200 to £300 on this set. Anyway, let's talk about the model itself then. So the weight is marvellously impressive. So both cars together, the whole set weighs in at 564 grams, which is more than a Helgen Peak. I would say that's kind of embarrassing for Helgen, but it's not. It's just because of how insanely heavy this is. And in fact, the driving car itself weighs 430 grams, which is within 10 grams of an Acura Scale Class 31. Now, yeah, the Acura Scale Class 31 wasn't particularly heavy for an Acura Scale loco, but still unbelievable. Until, of course, you start looking and you notice this whole rear section is totally full of metal, then it's less remarkable. Yes, they've ruined the model, basically, in order to make it that heavy, which is questionable. Again, I don't know why they needed to do that. Anyway, let's jump in and talk about decoration, which has been done excellently. The finish of this set is truly wonderful, particularly on the roof. You've got a real satin sheen to it. It looks as though it's got a quality paint job, which is good. And as usual from Bachmann, the quality of the application is excellent as well. We've got this M for Manchester logo here. Really beautiful little print. Then we've got the white, red and grey banding across the bottom of the body, which is quite enjoyable actually. It almost reminds me of the Intercity Executive livery. It's very similar to that, but it's all very crisp, extremely nicely applied. Yellow ends, of course. It's a very classic look for the Class 150, I would say. And again, the join between the yellow and the grey of the main body is absolutely perfect. Very, very well done. And there are loads of details that have been picked out in the paintwork. We've got the Regional Railways logo on the side there, beautiful print. We've got this gauge on the side, which has been picked out. We've got the step on the way into the train here, which has had a metal texture applied to it. Little tiny prints next to the doors where the buttons are, very, very well done. Running number, of course, on the side, and all sorts of very, very tiny text on the bottom of the body there. I can't even begin to read those with the naked eye, but I suspect they might even be legible, which is fantastic. And then, of course, the underframe. I guess we'll talk about this while we're here. Lots and lots of detail here, many separately fitted parts. And if I show you the underside, you can see even more of the detail. We've got a little drive shaft here, just cosmetic, of course. The real drive shaft is hidden away inside. But yeah, it all looks excellent. And of course, so much of this has been picked out with very, very precise paintwork. Detail-wise then, I think outwardly this is quite a simple DMU with a few exceptions. The underframe is obviously very complex. I can see that costing quite a lot to pull off. And then there's a few other bits and pieces which are really, really good. For example, the exhaust. This looks marvellously realistic because it's got this separate etched sort of guard around it, which is made of metal and is such a good quality part. Yeah, so that looks very, very good. The sides of the body have the flush glazing, which looks great, and of course there's even some decoration on these. And the window frames have been painted, once again, very precisely. So yeah, the glazing work looks great. The doors are very basic. These are mostly just moulded, but they look fine. They do the job. And then the driver's doors here, these do have the separate handrails around them, which I think are made of wire, and they look pretty good. And we've even got the little door handle on here. Not sure if that's separate or not, but it's certainly been picked out in a slightly different colour. The ends are pretty good as well. Obviously, bear in mind we've got the more realistic coupling. If you want to fit that, that was provided in the accessories bag. Or you've got an option to fit a plough here too, which is great. We've also got tiny little handrails, which are separately fitted. They look very good. Wipers pre-fitted, not just a part of the window glazing, thank goodness. Very convincing too, I would say. Then we've got destinations printed onto these windows already, so it's ready to go from that point of view. Pretty realistic looking lighting clusters, and if the instructions are to be believed, this model does have full working lighting, which is great. And we've even got a tiny little aerial, which I assume is going to be separately fitted on each end of the DMU, which is quite fragile though, so you need to sort of watch it. You don't want to be pulling that off by accident. Then up on the roof, here's the detail, very, very basic as per the prototype, although there's a little bit of roof furniture which might actually be separately fitted. Great moulding though, particularly when you look up close. Yeah, the rivets and everything, they do look very, very good. Then we've got the bogies, again, as per the prototype, relatively basic looking things, but they do the job. The quality of the moulding is good, and they're not too big and chunky, particularly the non-driven ones. Yeah, very lean looking bogies. Quite effective, I would say. Right, let's talk about the elephant in the room then, and that is the interior. So this whole section from here to here is totally compromised on the driving coach. And I think Bachmann have recognised how bad this is because they've painted the die-cast block into a grey colour to try and hide it. And even more comically, they've painted the silhouette of the side of a seat onto this to make it look as though there isn't a massive flat block of metal taking up the entire back half of the unit. Yeah, it's not very effective. It doesn't hide the fact that the model has been so badly compromised in any way. And if you look inside, you can also clearly see the 21-pin DCC socket. and if you were to fit a decoder there, I assume it would be even more visible. So yeah, not very good, compromised at the back there. Obviously the other vehicle is fine, you can see through all of the windows and you can see seats on that vehicle, so that's fine. It is of course just the driving vehicle. But the rest of the passenger compartment isn't brilliant either, because the floor level is at an unrealistic height. So the bottom of the seats are more or less level with the floor. So if you wanted to fit passengers, they would have to be legless, which is, you know, not exactly realistic. And again, with a train pack at this price, I would have expected some detail in the cab. And really, there's not much here to speak of. We've got seats, we've got a very, very basic instrument panel, but you can't really make out any of the detail on there, and none of it's been painted or picked out. Again, in 2025, a DMU that costs this much should have some sort of cab detail. It does have lighting, I think, for the interior. What is that lighting going to illuminate here exactly? Nothing. We've got no drivers, we've got no detail, no passengers on this version, and in places not even any seats, just a big ugly block of metal. How can they charge so much for this? What a rip-off this is. But there is good news, of course. Like I say, the prices of these have been dropping over the last, well, 6 months to a year. We've seen some much more sensible pricing for these, which tells us that these have not been selling at the higher prices, which is excellent. Once again, well done folks for not paying over the odds for something that I think almost quite objectively is not worth it. Even if you don't mind that the interior is ruined, you can't deny that over £300 does seem like quite a lot to spend on a model that quite clearly hasn't had very much spent on its interior. But otherwise, yeah, these are great. Like I say, outwardly, beautifully detailed, very high quality build as well. Like I say, they weigh a ton, all of the detail has been nicely applied, and I can't fault the paintwork. So it's not all bad. But anyway, that's the way these models look. Let's pop this down onto the track. Let's see how this set runs. And let's also investigate the mechanism, see what sort of features this pack has on the inside. So there it is, the 150 down onto the track, and as you can see, I've coupled these two together. Little bit of a pain to couple the two units. I think it's because of those electrical contacts on the drawbar. It's just a little bit harder to push the drawbar into the NEM pockets, but obviously once they're in, it's absolutely fine. And yeah, the closeness of the coupling is quite pleasing, I would say. Obviously, the couplings are kinematic, they're free to pivot nicely, and that allows them to be coupled close together. So yeah, on the track, it looks absolutely fantastic. I've already filmed the performance test and running in, so I'll show you all of that in just a second. Once running in was complete, I took this apart to look at the mechanism, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So, first of all, it does look as though there is just one decoder needed to power all of the lights and everything in both units. But, as you can see, there's only 2 pins connecting the 2 units, which means we've got 2 pins controlling the headlights, the tail lights, and the interior lights. Now, for all of that, there should be at least 4 pins to connect the two together, but there's only 2, so how on earth does this work? Well, here it is in a nutshell. So both units have pickups on them. The driving car picks up on all wheels, and so does the non-driven trailing vehicle. But the pickups are not shared between the two, so each vehicle picks up its own power individually. So the trailing vehicle here collects all of its own power, and then these pins connecting the two are just to control the lights. So I think presumably they control either the headlights and the interior lights together, or the tail lights and the interior lights together. Those are the 2 modes that seem to work here. Very, very clever that they've been able to connect these 2 units and the lighting together using just 2 contacts there. A little bit fiddly, like I say, to put together, but on the whole, a very, very clever solution. So here's the driving bogie. As you can see, this does pick up, but it picks up through the axles. And because of the weight of the unit, there are no traction tyres on this set, which again is a massive plus for me. Now the base keeper is just clipped on, not screwed on, which I'm not a big fan of, but I have to admit on this occasion it was very easy to get the base off. If you unclip it at the right end, it pops off without any problems. And as you can see, we've got proper bearings fitted to the driving axles here, which is good quality. I like to see that, and the picking up is done through these bearings too. And we've got gears going to both of the axles. So it's not all-wheel drive, but again, it's only a 2-car set, and thanks to the weight of the unit, there's no need for any more than that. It works absolutely fine as it is. Okay, body removal was quite straightforward, just 3 screws, 1 screw at one end, 2 at the other end. With the screws out, I gave it a quick tug just to see if I could get the body off, but no, there are clips holding it as well, so I had to resort to the glue spreader method, but with those in, the body came off without any problems at all, so that's pretty good. Here's the die-cast chassis. The chassis itself is actually made of metal, and you can see the seating here. Yeah, the floor level, not quite realistic here. And here's a better look at that hideous and gigantic chassis block. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't just leave it painted black, to be honest. I'll show you another DMU later on of Bachmann's with the same mechanism, but they left it blank. They didn't try and paint a seat on the side of it. Oh my goodness, Bachmann, what? And it was a lot subtler. Yeah, this has kind of drawn attention to it unnecessarily. And yeah, this is the one part of the model that looks really, really dated. It's just a massive chunky mechanism, and in 2025 it doesn't need to be. If you compare this with a newer Bachmann DMU such as their Class 121, that mechanism is almost invisible. You know, it's so small. And I understand, you know, 10-15 years ago it was normal and even necessary to see mechanisms this large, but then why are they still selling this in 2025 at such a high price without upgrading it? You know, time to fix this. This is not good enough, if you ask me. Anyway, here's the 21-pin DCC socket. So chip this, you'll get all of your controls on DCC. We've got just 2 LEDs illuminating the interior of the driven car. I think there might be more on the non-driven car, perhaps 3, maybe 4. Not in the cab or anything like that, so it's quite sparsely lit. Not very even, but better than no lighting. And then we've got LEDs at the ends, of course, for the head and tail lights, which are all independently controlled. Right, so I wanted to take a better look at the mechanism, so the first thing I did was remove the bogie, which I don't recommend you do because it's a pain to put them back, but I've done this many times, so I thought I'd give it a go. And as you can see, the bogie is almost entirely self-contained. All of the gearing and everything is within the bogie, and it's just driven by this drive shaft. And then here, if I unscrew the motor unit, we can take a look at the motor. Yep, it's a 5-pole motor. I was able to count the poles, so that's fantastic. And it even has a flywheel on it. So there are some advantages to the massive size of this thing. But if you also look at the block, you can see most of it is just empty space, which tells you it doesn't really need to be that big. Yes, the weight is nice. I love the weight. It's a very good weighty feeling DMU, but it doesn't need to be that heavy. It could be much lighter and still fit for purpose. So why such a massive chassis block was deemed necessary, I don't know, but I don't think it really was necessary. And then finally, the gauging back-to-back came in at between 14.3 and 14.4, which is bang on the standard, so nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it's a really decent mechanism. It's too big and it's kind of overkill for what this is, but in terms of the quality of the mechanism and its features, I can't fault it. It is a really, really good job. And I'm pleased to say that this does shine through in the performance. So with that, let me jump back in time and let me show you how this ran. Okay, moment of truth then, first ever run. How is this one going to perform? Let's see, forwards direction. Let me gently turn this up and see what happens. Is there life? Ooh. Tell you what, I thought there wasn't going to be. I started turning it up and I saw the headlights come on and nothing moved. But then as I carried on turning, it started. And yeah, it seems lovely. So it may be a very large, bulky mechanism, which is frankly inappropriate for a DMU of this size, but it does seem to run beautifully. Creeping along very quietly, which I like. Yeah, I think you can tell straight away that that's a really good performer. Let me creep this up in terms of speed then and run by at half power. So here we go. This is what 50% looks like at the moment. So it's not over the top, is it? Yeah, it's certainly quite calm and relaxed, as you'd, well, I don't know. Would you expect that from a sprinter? Doesn't look like it's sprinting, that's full speed. I think we're talking about 75 miles per hour top speed for something like this. So I would have said the gearing there then is pretty appropriate. Alright, let's do some more basic performance tests then. Obviously I will run this in before I make any conclusions, but let's just stop this. Yep, there's torque. You can hear the wheels spinning, so it's plenty powerful. Can it crawl? Obviously, if it can't, I will let this run in and we'll try again later. But let me just back up a little bit. Here we go, crawl. Yeah, a bit more. So struggling to maintain it a little bit, but it does seem capable of going slow, but it's not smooth at the moment. It sorts of creeps forward and then stalls and creeps a bit further. A bit more. A little bit more. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's better. So that's very, very good. I like that. Now, interior lighting. Yes, I can see it, but I doubt you'll be able to. It's very, very dim. So I suppose I'll put the camera a little bit higher up so that you can see the light reflecting off the floor and the seats. And yeah, I'll switch the lights off and see if we can get that on camera. So I'll be back. Right, hopefully this is going to be dark enough. So let me turn this up to 50 again. Yeah, hopefully you can see. Let's go full power so that they're brightest. So yeah, as you can see, we do have LEDs coming on the interior. So if you wanted to show the world how poor the interior of this DMU was, you've got lights to help you do that. Obviously, the darkness at the back once again highlights that there is no real interior for the back portion of this carriage. And also, there is no cab light. Yeah, the cab remains dark. There may be a cab light. You guys will know whether there is or not because you'll have seen the mechanism section. But at least on analog, no, we've got no cab lights switching on and off. Then in terms of head and tail lights, yeah, we've got the headlights coming on automatically in the forwards direction, and in reverse, we've got the tail lights coming on in the reverse direction. So it works very well, working on both vehicles despite only 2 electrical contacts between the 2 vehicles. It's a very, very cool design, actually. Pretty smart. So I think with that then, it's time to get this thing running around the track. We'll see how it handles the curves. I would predict this is going to be fine on the curves because the kinematic couplings seem really reliable and smooth. I reckon this is going to be fine, but will it be? Let's see. Let's do a bit of a run up, so mainly so that it can drive past you. And let's give it 50% speed and run it in. So there we go. 30 minutes in both directions. And there it goes. Very sensible speed. Yeah, you can totally imagine this trundling down a branch line or something at this sort of speed, and it went around the sort of S-bend or semi-S-bend without derailing, so that's good. So the kinematics seem to work fine. Plenty of pickups, no reliability issues, nice smooth performance. So yeah, I think the big block of a mechanism has its disadvantages, mainly visually, but it has its advantages as well. I mean, the performance of this is absolutely fantastic. At the moment, would I fault it? I don't think I'd fault it at the moment. Nope, seems to be a really top-notch performer. So it's definitely got that going for it. Anyway, I'll let this run in. It's going to have 30 minutes in both directions, and then we'll come back. I'll run some more DMUs, and of course, I'll finish off this review. Okay, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. All right then, folks, I am back, and this is thoroughly warmed up and run in, and I have to say, it's delightful. It is absolutely delightful. I mean, it's possibly a bit because of that Hornby Class 110, which was such a nightmare, derailing all the time. Yeah, maybe that's influenced how I feel. But to have this just run so smoothly and quietly and staying on the track, which sounds like the bare minimum, but at the moment, with the way I feel, that is a massive plus. Yeah, it's just so reliable. It's lovely. It's one of those models that you don't have to worry about. You're not wondering how long it's going to work for before you've got to intervene. It's just one of those that you can put on the track, turn the controller up and leave it, and it will do its thing and look pretty good doing it. Yeah. So that is one good thing about the mechanism. It's way overkill, but at least it's darn good. Yeah, the performance is spot on. Or at least it was. I've not tried the crawl since running it in, so I'll do that. Let's also see if this has sped up at all now that it's had a chance to warm up. Nope, about the same as before, so it's sensible. It's not over quick, I would say, but if you want this to sprint, you can do that. And I don't think you'd really want to see this running much faster than that. I think if it was much quicker, you'd say, this is a bit unrealistically quick now. So the gearing seems very sensible. As we saw before, there's plenty of torque. So Yep, the motor's not struggling. As you can see, the wheels are turning, and there seemed to be enough torque for this to crawl nicely. So let's turn this up very gradually and see. Look at that. A bit more. And then it just inches forwards. Very, very smoothly. And can you accelerate gradually? Yes, you can. And that's on analog, so on DCC it's only going to be better. So that means pulling into the station, sort of adjusting your parking at the station, delicate maneuvers, it can do that. And it doesn't struggle and it doesn't stutter, so it looks realistic. It looks like a real DMU. It controls like a real DMU. It doesn't sort of jump and stutter and suddenly stop. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the way this runs. And the nice close coupling is effective too. So yeah, I really like this. It had some work to do, I think, to redeem itself because of the way the interior was. But on the whole, that hasn't spoilt things too much because the other aspects of the model are so good. So on the whole, I'm really pleased with this. I think it's great. So yeah, let's run again and I'll show you what else I'm going to run besides it. And I think 50% looks the best, so we'll stick with that. Right, so on the middle line, I've forgotten exactly which class this is. I think it's the class 108. But I could be wrong about that, so feel free to confirm or deny in the comments. And yeah, this is a very, very similar Bachmann DMU, and it does have the same very unrealistic motor bogie, which is just there, I think. And I don't like this much, and obviously I would prefer if it had a more low relief, more subtle mechanism, but the chassis block in this one is just painted black, and it just doesn't catch the eye as much. You know, we've not got the silhouette of a seat drawn onto the side of the thing to try and make it look more subtle when in fact it has the opposite effect. Yeah, I think that was the best approach. It does look better. It's still not great, but it's better than it being painted grey. It's just a little bit harder to notice this way. So yeah, I think Bachmann, for future reference, I think you did it best on this loco. And then on the inside line, I've got another type of Sprinter. This is a Hornby one. It's nowhere near as good, but it's got a few things counting in its favour. I mean, the decoration's obviously very good. That helps to disguise the fact that this is a very old and dated model. And also we've got kind of tinted glazing on the windows, which makes it quite difficult to see the interior. And that makes the fact that the interior is not very good on this either a little bit harder to notice as the thing runs. So yeah, there we go. Enjoy the running session, see which other DMUs you can spot. And here comes the 150 again now, and we'll continue to observe her performance. And yeah, just look at the lovely way that this runs. It's really, really nice to have something so smooth, not derailing on the curves, not slowing down on them, just something that runs so perfectly at all times. Yeah, that makes a really nice change. So yeah, this is really well done. I think the main thing I would criticise about this is that the mechanism is just way over the top. I mean, in terms of pulling power, would you believe this is the same as an Acura Scale Class 31? And that's fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's deeply unnecessary. This thing could have been a tenth as powerful as it is and still have been perfectly okay. And of course, because the mechanism is so over the top, because it's so big and heavy, that has encroached on the detailing a little bit, which is a shame. Apart from that though, it's a really, really good job. I don't think it's worth the money, at least not at the full undiscounted prices, or 10 to 15% down from that. But if you can find one of these in the sale, I could highly recommend it. And if you'd like to see what's available, like I say, I do have affiliate links down in the description. But there you have it. Yep, the Bachmann Class 150, certainly one of their better DMUs. But I think if this is going to cost over £300 at the full price, I think it's time for an upgrade now. There are things about this that could be tweaked and improved to make this fit in with other premium models in 2025. I think that's what I would say. Otherwise, a really good job and a model that actually I'm really enjoying. Let's have some ratings then for Bachmann's Class 150. And you know what, there's one or two things that did let this down for me. But on the whole, I have to say this is very, very good. For the most part, it looks great, it runs brilliantly, it's well designed, it's good quality, the mechanism's good. Yeah, on the whole, this is actually a lot more decent than I thought it was going to be when perhaps I first clapped eyes on it. Level of detail though is possibly the weakest area, but not across the board. I've given it 3.5, but there's lots about this model that is fantastic. The paintwork is marvellous. I don't think I'd really fault the exterior detail. The moulding is great, it looks nice and modern. Lots of fine details and separate parts, all of that looks great. The underframe is exemplary, that looks very, very good. And there's loads of accessories as well, such as realistic couplings, snow ploughs, and quite a bit more. It is the interior that lets this down though. We've got that massive chassis block which is very unrealistic, and it's been painted weirdly, which makes it stand out even more. The cab is pretty disappointing as well, no crew fitted, no lighting in there, and also no details picked out or anything like that. It's very, very basic. And then the passenger compartments, these aren't exactly realistic either because the floor level is too high. So yeah, the interior, very poor. The exterior, fantastic. Overall, it's kind of above middle of the road, 3.5 star. The performance though, I am not going to fault. This is a spot-on performer. Great range of speeds, very sensibly geared, not too fast, not too slow. I think the speed's about perfect. It's reliable on the track, it doesn't struggle over the curves, it doesn't derail on the curves, that's great. It's quiet, it's smooth, it can crawl nicely as well without stuttering and cutting out. And the lights are good and bright as well. Good brightness, not too dim, they don't flicker or anything like that, at least not as I've seen. Very, very good on performance. And the pulling power is unnecessarily good, I would say. The model doesn't need to be this heavy, but because it is and because it's got a powerful motor, this thing potentially could haul around 40 coaches on straight and level track, which is obviously ridiculous. That's what, 20 times more than it needs to be able to haul. Absolutely crazy, but again, pretty good. The mechanism, 5 star. This is a very, very good mechanism. Great coupling design between the two units. It's a pain to get them coupled, that's not so good, but once they are coupled it works great, and because the whole lot works off just one decoder, that saves you money not having to buy a second decoder for the second car, so that's very good. Let's see, pickups on all wheels, did I say that? Proper bearings on the driving axles, a 5-pole motor with a flywheel. That's pretty good for a DMU, and it's reasonably serviceable as well. Yes, the base keeper is clipped on, but it's very easy to get off, and I didn't have any trouble getting the body off either, so chipping this, servicing it, not an issue at all. So I think, all things considered, 5 star. It doesn't have a pre-fitted speaker, I don't think, so do keep that in mind. The quality, again, I cannot fault. This is a really good quality model. I didn't see any details sort of wonky or missing. The decoration was spot on without any blotches or glue marks or anything like that. And obviously it's really heavy as well. It feels good in the hands, it feels quality. Some of Bachmann's DMUs, I remember the 121 bubble car, feels very, very light and plasticky in the hands. Not so with this one, so quality, excellent. Value for money though is what I do call into question. So right off the bat, I paid £129.15, which is perfectly good. That is, in fact, a bargain, I would say. If that was the price normally, I'd give this 5 star. The full price though, the RRP, is £309.95. And I have to say, I can't understand that price at all. You know, if this had a super complex interior, if it had loads and loads of separate parts on the outside, which were very complex, you know, all of this stuff, if it was a truly state-of-the-art model which was pushing all of the boundaries of what's possible with a modern DMU in 00 scale, then I would say, yeah, possibly this is worth that. But no, this is a model that's clearly 10 years old. It's got no complexity at all on the interior, and while the exterior is good, it's not special, it's not sort of better than we've seen on other cheaper DMUs. The mechanism, again, it's good, but so it should be at any price. There's nothing about this that I can see that justifies that massively high price. There are better value DMUs out there. So I've split the difference, I've given it 3 star on value. If you can find this reduced at a good price, it's worth every penny. But £309.95 or 10 to 15% down from that, personally, I don't think it's worth it. But do comment down below, let me know what you think about the value. Overall though, I think this has done pretty well, 8.50 out of 10, or a grade of A. yes, the interior has dragged the score down a little bit, but not to the point where I think it deserves less than an A. It's a very, very good DMU on the whole. And into the logbook this goes, and it's 4th place, just above the Atlas C420 and below Rapido's Sterling Single. So yeah, much better than I thought this was going to be, but it's well deserved. It's a great DMU, it looks fantastic for the most part, and that performance is something I really, really enjoy. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for my review of Bachmann's Class 150. Please do get in touch, let me know what you think about this using the comments. Have you got one of these? What's your experience? What about the 2 different versions? Is there a big difference between one of these released in 2008 and one of these in 2014? Did they retool it entirely between those 2? Did they upgrade it? Or is the difference just down to a tooling variation? Perhaps they did a new variant in 2014 and the rest of the model is the same. I don't know. If you've got one of the earlier ones, one of the first releases, do let me know what it's like. How is it different from one of these produced more recently? But yeah, anyway, we will leave it there. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this as always. And yeah, I rode one of these not too long ago, so that's why I chose to review this now. And yeah, glad to have one that runs so well too. So thanks once again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks.